How are we going, everyone? Now, I've been inside all day because it was 36 degrees. Actually, I say a lie there. I was outside watering twice at least with impact sprinklers going, and I thought I'd start off with a beautiful display in my background here. This is after a stinking hot 36. The sun has disappeared. I still keep the hat on. Look what's happened to my tomatoes. Now, that was from the high winds. So it would have been more than 36, and the stinking hot winds. This ground is wet. Bugger me, huh? That's because the wind's coming through here. Look at it. It's just smashed it right here. That side's more protected, so they're still a bit better on the other side yet. And we've got tomatoes to ripen. While we're out here, let's have a look at the soil and see what condition it's in after this stinking hot day. Some of the garden beds are really active, so you've got a lot of good life going on there and worms and composting, whereas others are actually starting to break down and they're halfway through their life cycle, so not as active. And then I've got other beds where basically depleted and they need to be topped up. So let's go check out some of the beds. I didn't blind tip these, but you can see they're starting to lose all their color in the leaf. And what's happening with the older leaves, they start to lose their nutritional density or their nutrient density, and they're pushing it to the tips. Plus the fact that I've been watering it really heavy, the garden bed that is, it's taking up a lot of moisture and washing out all those minerals that are otherwise there for the plant to take up. So heavy watering because a lot of heat that we've had. Tomatoes didn't like it under here. They were competing heavily against the pumpkin. We've got an eggplant and you can see it's a little bit stunted as well. Let's have a look at the soil underneath. It's moist. You can see the moisture's there. Yeah, it's damp. Let's just take up a little bit. Have a look at that. Some roots in there. It's a little bit gritty, meaning a bit, oh no, there you go. If I squeeze it, it forms. I like seeing worms. It almost looks like it's turned into bark. It's almost like a potty mix. So it's draining really quick. Let's go down a little bit lower. Get my hands into here. Yeah, look, it's so friable. Look, that's a good mix. I think it needs composting. This needs to be activated a bit more. So it's holding the moisture, not as good as I'd like it to, but I reckon we're going to top dress this one with compost and a mulch. Let's go to the next bed. Have a look at this now. This is sunken right to the ground. We had a tomato in here. We had a good harvest and it's still trying to push on more. So this was about September, I think, or actually no, October we planted. So it's given us a good crop. Birds have eaten some. We've still got some dwarf beans here as well that are having a second round. Now let's have a look at this stuff here. This is almost on the ground. You can see it's holding together better. Oh, look at that. Oh, gorgeous. Oh, look at that. Look at that. This is a gorgeous bed. So it's not that the bed's not active. We've got lots of life in here, folks. It's just this tomato's had its time, I reckon, as has the petunia. And I'm not going to fill this bed up. I'm probably top dress it again, a bit of compost, mix in our superfood and things like that, and a bit of mulch. And that's all it needs. So I'm going to keep planting at this level. I'm going to use the walls as a barrier. This bed here, I gave it a top dress. This is the bed with a really bad soil in it. And I've left everything to go to seed. And I've done it purposely, like the carrots. I mean, there's a billion seeds there. I don't know how they're going to germinate because the mulch is quite dense. We've got our parsley on this side here. And the nasturtiums always come up on their own. Now, it's moist as well. This is just sitting on top of the old soil underneath, which is the really fibrous stuff. See that stuff there? It's really hard underneath. Well, not hard, but fibrous. It's not friable and loose. It's holding moisture, but it dries up real quick. So this mulch and compost and mulch that I've got here, well, in fact, it's a planting mix, has acted as a barrier to retain the moisture and keep these plants alive. And this has grown larger since I've done that. This is what I've been working on. The first time I done it, it was just compost and straw, dry straw, and I'll show you the bed afterwards. This time around, I had the straw sitting in the biostimulant like I do in the past where I activated, and a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And that's, you know, how the mulch sits in this barrow with water and EcoButch and Liquid Gold for a week or something like that, or just a few days. And what I did there is I've taken the water out, or the liquid, most of it, left the straw in there, and then I threw our compost and or planting mix. In this case here, it's a planting mix because I can see the seeds, the hull there, and I've blended it in with the straw. So this is a composting straw or bed. I can do with a little bit more straw. It's a little bit light on that, and it's been in the sun. That's drying out already, but it's still got its moisture, and not as much as it was before. But I reckon this, like I did over there with the straw and the compost, but activating the straw because that you can tell it's dry on top. It'll break down, but by activating it with a biostimulant, it just kicks into gear. You put all the life back into it. So you get all those, the microbes, the life in there activating, and they start to break down and feed your soil. And that's where you start to see results. Now, this is exposed to the worst of worst elements here, folks. It gets all that northwesterly wind blowing through. This dinosauric looking spring onions. Look at the size of it. They're thicker in diameter than my wrist. They're massive. Well, this bed here is where I put the compost and straw unactivated under here. It's already broken down. It's working down. I'll put a bed of straw on top of that as well. So that's what it was. And I spread that everywhere because this bed was constantly drying out and it hasn't received the water. You can see the grounds around here are dry. So have a look at the ground, really dry. So no water's gone into this, only in the morning, not in the afternoon, because I put the impact sprinkler and because the wind's coming through, this was missing out all the time. So it's still moist, even with all that high wind that we had today. And the rocket, and lots of you would know about rocket, if it's hot and your soil is not holding its moisture, that's the first thing to wilt. It'll wilt, it'll crisp up, and it'll never recover. You can see the wind's been blowing on that spot there, but because the moisture's in there, the ground, look at that, it's still moist. There's no straw in this part, but anyway, I'm sure I put some in there. The first ones that I've showed you, the pumpkin was pretty much halfway through its life and it needs to be topped up. There was really no light. Well, there is light, but we didn't go down deep enough to see that, but you can tell it needs to be topped up. We saw the middle bed that's sunken right down to the ground, and with a tomato and a little dwarf bean and petunias, that's packed with life as well underneath there, and that's perfect. And you only need to top up again. So then the third one, we've already topped up because it's missing all the life in the soil. You know, it's really nutrient deficient in the soil. So we're activating that and we still need to work on that. This is probably 2 months since I topped it up. Yep. And the eggplant's gone in there. Look at that. It's doing really well outside in the full-blown wind. The peas have grown because of the mulch. Pak choi, we already harvested one out of there. We've got onions going to seed. And let's have a look at the soil under here. There we are. I'm sure there are worms in here. There's one. There's a couple. But yeah, there's another one. Juvenile worms, which is a good sign because they're going to grow. Now remember, worms do shrink because of the environment surrounding them. If they're lacking moisture, they'll shrink and compensate themselves. Oh, there's another one coming out there. So this is a little active worm farm at the same time as a compost, as a bed. It does everything. So look after them and try not to disturb your soil. And that's exactly why we shouldn't be digging, because we're undermining all the life in the soil and separating them from the colonies. And they have to rebuild it all again. So at the end of the day, folks, with your gardens, with all this heat that we have, no matter where you live in the world, once you go through a little stint of heat like we have today and high winds, make sure you compost, liquid feed, top dress your garden beds, because at the end of the day, you've got to look after the soil's microbiome, because you know it's exactly and almost like, if not identical to our gut microbiome. So we look after that well, the plants will get up their nutrients that they need and their minerals, because remember, they don't make the nutrients and minerals, the soil does for you. And that's where they draw it up from. So if the soil hasn't got it and you're pumping in that shit stuff, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, those chemicals, well, that's all they've got to take up. That's all they're going to take. So if you're going to try and get your nutrients out of a leaf like this that's full of synthetic, it's not going to happen. You're going to be always deficient, and your microbiome in your gut flora isn't going to populate properly. You're going to be running on half empty, not half full. There's a lot behind that, and we're going to explore that. I'm going to go down the path of exploring not just the garden, because it's so important to understand what we do in the kitchen, in and around the house. I've mentioned it briefly in a couple of videos earlier, and slowly we'll share some more set recipes as we do in our magazine and things like that. So we'll talk about the benefits of good food and how you should look after it and preserving at the same time. But more importantly, start with your soil. Get that right, and everything around you in your life will flourish so much better. But for now, enjoy your day if you're watching it in the morning, or enjoy your evening and have a lovely evening. And check out our website. You know that I'm going to say that. Our black wheat is going to turn up expected tomorrow. And if it does, the prices are going up. And I know it's going to hurt everyone. It's going to hurt us too. But at the end of the day, it's what it is. So take advantage. There's less than a couple of hundred buckets left of the kilos that we released. So there's probably about 100, I think it was 189 or something like that. Grab them because they're the last of them as pre-orders, and if they don't sell, well, they're going to go up in price when the stock turns up. VasilisGarden.com, everything you need every day at discounted prices and great products too. From me, Vasily, Maresi.